Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide in Washington, Mike Wallace in New York, and Norman Glubach in Houston, Texas.
Good evening. During the election campaign, President Nixon spoke frequently of a plan, unspecified, for ending the Vietnam War. Today, Democratic Senator George McGovern attacked Nixon's handling of the war and challenged him to unveil his plan. But support for the president came from an unexpected quarter, Senate Democratic Whip Edward Kennedy. Kennedy said Nixon has told congressional leaders that the plan has been put into effect at the Paris peace talks. The senator added that Mr. Nixon should be given a chance to see if it works. McGovern made his criticism in a Senate speech, which he later discussed with reporters.
It appears to me that for the last 4 months since the election, more specifically the 2 months since President Nixon has taken office, that the military, the Joint Chiefs, Ambassador Bunker, and others have been pressing him very hard to continue a military offensive in the South. We've had public predictions from our top military commanders that the war has now turned a corner, that victory is ahead, that the enemy is exhausted, and that if we just keep on the pressure, that soon we can score a military decision. I think it's in response to that kind of public boasting on the part of our military commanders, plus the increased American military operations in the South, that you have the current Viet Cong offensive. They're demonstrating that they're still alive, that they're not going to yield, and that there is no hope for military victory. I suspect that there are still those in high place in this administration who dream of military victory, and those dreams will never be realized. I think most of the critics of our policy in Vietnam were willing to give the president a reasonable length of time to carry out what he indicated during the campaign was a new plan for ending the war. But more than 4 months have passed since the election. 2 months have passed since the president took over the White House, and I think the time has come for the administration to halt the military escalation of the war and to unveil the plan that the president talked about in the campaign for bringing about an end to the killing.
CBS News diplomatic correspondent Marvin Kalb reports that Mr. Nixon's peace plan is more an approach than a blueprint. Basically, Kalb says, it is to exercise military restraint to enemy provocation in Vietnam while pursuing negotiations on 2 levels in Paris. One of those levels, between Washington and Hanoi, involves military de-escalation. The other, between Saigon and the Viet Cong, involves a political solution. The U.S. command in Saigon said today that more than 300 enemy troops were killed in a series of weekend battles around Saigon. Allied losses were reported light. But there was no let-up in the enemy rocket and mortar attacks that began February 23rd. Overnight, 30 more towns and bases were shelled. More than 1,300 American paratroopers completed an 8,500-mile trip from Fort Bragg, North Carolina today by jumping into a mock battle in South Korea. The exercise was designed to show how quickly U.S. forces can be moved to assist any threatened Asian ally. There were a few minor hitches. One trooper found his static line caught to his transport plane, but he managed to cut the line and land safely. And the commanding officer, Major General John Dean, parachuted into an icy stream and had to be rescued. These maneuvers have had political repercussions, raising a storm of protests by many Japanese, and communist North Korea has denounced them as a war provocation.
We're thinking about introducing Benson & Hedges 100s around the world. After all, we've had the disadvantages to ourselves long enough. Cigarette that made Extra Puffs popular in America make Extra Puffs popular around the world?
70-year-old Mrs. Golda Meir was sworn in as Israel's 4th premier today, and she pledged that she will not permit any Middle East settlement to be imposed on her country by the Big Four powers. Israel, she said, must seek peace in direct negotiations with the Arabs. Mrs. Meir's cabinet remains unchanged from that of the late Levi Eshkol. Earlier in the day, Israeli jets again attacked suspected Arab guerrilla bases in Jordan, inflicting a number of casualties. Jordan's King Hussein, visiting in Cairo, had what could have been an important meeting on the Middle East today with Robert Anderson, the former U.S. Treasury Secretary. Anderson called his trip out there private, but Cairo sources indicated that he's been serving, at least informally, as a channel of communication between Arab leaders and Washington. A summit meeting of the Warsaw Pact nations in Budapest ended tonight, only 2 hours after it began. And the first statement to come out of it was only a renewed Soviet bloc call for an all-European conference on security and peaceful cooperation. Reports said the Russians had called the meeting, hoping to get the pact members to condemn Red China for those recent border clashes with the Soviet Union. But Romania, which has been maintaining a neutral stand, reportedly refused to go along. Meanwhile, it was disclosed in Moscow that 3,000-man Chinese and Russian regiments were involved in Saturday's clash in Manchuria. The Soviet commander, a colonel, was among those killed. Britain tonight has assembled a task force of 200 paratroopers and commando police to take over the Caribbean island of Anguilla unless the island's leaders quickly end their rebellion. Fog tonight delayed the force's departure for Antigua, some 70 miles from Anguilla. The Anguilla situation reached a crisis last week when a British minister said he was driven from the island at gunpoint by what he called mafia-type gangsters. The Space Agency today released some more spectacular film shot by the Apollo 9 astronauts during their 10-day Earth orbital mission. As the film starts, Spider, the lunar landing vehicle, after a moment's trouble, is seen undocking from the command module. The view is from the command module.
Okay, you're free. I'm free? Roger. What did you do? Oh, went back to the old memory and did a cycle on the switch, and you look like you're free. Okay, great. Oh, I see you. Okay, coming in the sunlight. Great. You're the biggest looking star I've ever seen. But you're upside down again. Hey, I was just thinking, one of us isn't right side up. Boy, you've got contraptions hanging out all over. So good.
This is the view from the other direction, showing how the command module looked from inside the LEM. You can decide for yourself who's upside down. Here, the command module has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, and the drogue chute opens to break its fall toward the Atlantic. Now the 3 main chutes open, as seen by the astronauts lying on their backs looking up. The CBS News special report, The View from Apollo 9, will be broadcast later tonight over many of these stations.
Cake, Alvin.
You bake it?
Who else?
Anybody else. Your cakes are so dry. Oh, water!
Joan, my cakes are dry.
Try Duncan Hines. It comes in an airtight plastic bag. That's one reason it stays so fresh. And you get a really moist cake.
Delicious.
Need water?
Not for this cake.
Duncan Hines. So moist you don't have to wash it down.
Dearest husband, our first dinner, and you're not eating.
But, lovey-dove, Mother says fried food's too greasy.
I'm not your mother, Cuddles. I fry practically grease-free with Crisco oil. After I fry 4 pieces of chicken in 1 cup of Crisco oil, it all comes back, see? Except 1 tablespoon.
It isn't greasy. Lammy pie.
Crisco oil. Fries practically grease-free.
A Venezuelan police official reported today that there is real evidence of sabotage in yesterday's jetliner crash, which so far has claimed an estimated 154 lives. That makes it history's worst air disaster. The official who raised the sabotage possibility did not elaborate. Reports differ on the number, but there were as many as 87 persons on board that Venezuelan airliner. 46 or 47 were Americans, including 5 employees of the Clark Equipment Company of Battle Creek, Michigan. Accompanied by their wives, they had been attending a sales meeting in Venezuela. Eyewitnesses say one engine caught fire as the jet was taking off from Maracaibo for Miami. Moments later, it plowed into the suburb of Zaruma, killing all aboard. The jet's fuselage, shown here, came to rest in an area of one-story concrete block houses. Maracaibo's Bishop Roa Perez, at the bottom left, personally inspected the disaster scene as the hunt for bodies went on. Rescue workers, some wearing masks against the smoke, helped firemen in hosing down the smoldering rubble. At least 67 persons died on the ground, and another 125 were treated for injuries at local hospitals. But there was nothing to be done for many of the victims. In Lima today, 5 gunmen hijacked a Peruvian airliner, but during a refueling stop in Ecuador, they permitted the 73 passengers to disembark before continuing the flight to Cuba. Major banks across the nation today hiked their prime interest rate from 7% to 7.5%, an all-time high. The prime rate is charged the bank's largest customers, but an increase usually ends up costing all borrowers more. The move brought a prompt blast from Democrat Bright Patman, the chairman of the House Banking Committee, who said, quote, "They think they can get away with legalized robbery of the people." Patman urged President Nixon to force the banks to roll back the new rate. Prices closed mixed on the New York Stock Exchange today. On a volume of 9,150,000 shares, the exchange index gained 11 cents. The American Exchange Index lost 2 cents. The television industry has drawn considerable criticism recently for violence in programs. Some thoughts on that now from Eric Severide. Eric?
The President's Commission on Violence is in the middle of exhaustive studies trying to determine what relationship there is between the portrayal of violence in the mass media and the reality of violence in the streets and homes of the country. To this effort and to the many private studies already done or in process, still another is to be added. This is to be undertaken by the Surgeon General's office under the prodding chiefly of Rhode Island Senator Pastore, who is in a violent mood about violence on television. Government, sometimes in the form of senators, assumes the right to exert pressure on broadcasting content for legal reasons that go back to the physical limitation on the number of air channels, though they turned out to be far less limited than originally believed. And one senatorial proposal now is to have the industry's trade association, the National Association of Broadcasters, censor programs in advance. In basic principle, this is not wildly different from a proposition that the National Association of Newspaper Publishers tell individual papers what they can and cannot print. In any case, the whole move is directly contrary to the steady lifting of censoring restrictions on books, films, and magazines where almost anything goes. The fact is that so far there is very little agreement among psychologists and social scientists as to the effect of mass media violence upon children, though that's no argument for maintaining the present saturation level of such programming, which often seems to be an easy substitute for more imaginative entertainment. Anyway, a colleague of ours has a thought which we pass along in a craven mood of uncertainty for the benefit of senators or anybody else. The trouble is, he claims, that TV does not show violence. Not really. It shows make-believe violence. Bang, bang, you're dead, and it's only a bloodless marionette that bites the dust. The way to stop all violence on the screen and to turn everybody against violence itself, he argues, is to really show it. Show the soldier's leg being amputated. Show the man staggering from the burning plane with his face gone. Amplify the screams of mortal agony. That's the reality of violence. 1 week of the trauma of reality might purify the country, solve the gun control problem, and for all we know, end the war in Vietnam. It might also, of course, end the television industry. What would happen to Senator Pastore's nerve ends is an equally interesting uncertainty. Walter?
Vice President Agnew today announced plans for an expanded federal day camp program for city youngsters this summer. The program, utilizing university and college campuses, is designed to benefit 75,000 young people in 40 metropolitan areas. Representatives of 9 Protestant denominations, principal among them some Methodists and Presbyterians, today outlined a plan to unite their 25 million members into one church. The outline's part of an 8-year-old ecumenical movement, and such a merger, if it should occur, is not expected for several years.
Would you like to sit down, young man?
Oh, me? Oh, no, thank you, ma'am.
Back bothering you?
Uh-huh. Imagine me with a nagging backache.
Keep you awake last night?
Didn't sleep a wink.
Poor thing. Why don't you try Dome's pills?
Dome's pills?
Listen to the voice of experience. Doan's pills are often the answer to nagging backache and the sleepless nights they can bring. Doans often help relieve backache pain, which may come on with overexertion or everyday stress and strain. And Doans are not a habit-forming drug, but a well-known standard remedy used by millions.
Hey, aren't you the lady with the Doan's pills?
That's right. Here, let me help you out.
Oh, no, today I'll give you a hand.
Try Doan's pills, regular or convenient large size, for welcome relief from nagging backache.
Senator Abraham Ribicoff of Connecticut declared today that the time is long overdue for President Nixon to pay more attention to the U.S. consumer. Ribicoff was one of several Democratic congressmen who took the president to task at a Senate subcommittee hearing on legislation to create a federal Department of Consumer Affairs. One area of recent concern to many people is the question of credit ratings and the invasion of privacy. CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace investigated that question.
May I help you?
Yes, please. My name is Wallace, and I'm starting a small business. We're not going to have an office to begin with, and I understand that you take telephone calls.
Oh, you want to use our address and telephone number?
Exactly.
Oh, yes, of course, we can arrange that. Do you know what the rates are?
No, I don't.
They're $15 a month for both.
For?
And the only thing that's...
For both?
For both mail and telephone service.
I can have my mail sent here and my calls received
exactly.
here.
That's
$15
right.
a month.
Right. The only thing that's required is that you fill out a form from the post office that permits us to act as agents and accept mail for you.
Understood.
This is where the experiment began, a building at 200 West 57th Street in New York City. That is the home of Accurate Secretarial Service. The firm provides a business address for small enterprises that don't want to rent their own offices. We signed a standard post office form permitting delivery of mail through an agent. We filled in the name of our non-existent company, Transitaire Systems, and the nature of the business, Systems Consultants.
And would you also like some business cards? Just letterheads and... All right, that's 23.15. That's 24.15 for the letterhead.
So, Transitaire Systems was in business. An office, a telephone number, and a letterhead. What we wanted to find out was this. Is it possible for a small, unknown firm having nothing to do with credit to obtain supposedly confidential credit ratings? How easy is it to crack the files of local credit bureaus around the country? There are more than 2,100 local credit bureaus in the United States. They collect and file information on the finances of persons living in their localities. Information obtained from a variety of sources, from banks, department stores, employers, court records, to name a few. The local bureaus are joined together in a national organization. They exchange information among themselves and sell that information to clients. Those clients being firms that are considering granting credit. According to industry spokesmen, that information is not available to outsiders. John Spafford, Executive Director of Associated Credit Bureaus of America, talked with reporter Norman Glubach.
Could anyone who's interested buy a credit report on anybody?
No, sir, they could not. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, they have to be a bona fide credit grantor. And by that I mean they have to be in the business of extending credit to individual consumers. They go make an application to become a member of the local credit bureau. The local credit bureau will investigate them to find out that they are in the business of extending credit. And if they find they meet the qualifications of that bureau, they will sign a contract with that individual credit grantor. And then and only then do they have access to credit information in the files of that bureau.
Then, in your opinion, a person down here in Houston couldn't write to Chicago, for example, and ask for information about some Chicagoan. Would he receive that information?
No, he would not. He would not.
Transitaire Systems, of course, had nothing to do with granting credit because, in fact, it did no business at all. But we sent off letters to 20 credit bureaus around the country, bureaus picked at random from an industry directory. In each case, we asked for a credit report on an individual, a name picked, again at random, from the local telephone book. We said we were considering granting credit to that person. Under the industry guidelines, we should have been told to contact our local New York credit bureau, which could then have checked out our credentials. That isn't exactly the way it happened. Out of that mailing of 20 letters, we received, without further question, full credit reports on 10 individuals. We received them directly from credit bureaus in Norwalk, Connecticut, in Corbin, Kentucky, Huntington, West Virginia, Belvedere, Illinois, Fort Smith, Arkansas, Greenville, Mississippi, Bismarck, North Dakota, Blytheville, Arkansas, and Bowling Green, Kentucky. 2 other local bureaus offered to send information if we would sign a contract with them. 3 others reported they had no file on the individual requested. 4 did not reply. Only 2 of the 20 referred us to our local credit bureau, the procedure ostensibly required by the industry code. So on that first mailing of 20 letters, we batted an even 500, in spite of assurances that it could not be done.
And in your opinion, it's not easy for people who are not entitled to information to get it.
It's impossible.
Perhaps you'd like to see what a credit report looks like. This is a composite. We typed up a report using entries from several of the reports that we received, and of course we changed the names and addresses so as not to identify the subjects. The top half of the form gives general information: name, address, employment, income, size of family, that kind of thing. But the bottom half gets down to the crux of the matter: credit history. This column on the left shows the kind of credit involved: B for bank loan, F for finance company, D for department store, and so on. The form shows the highest amount of credit involved in each transaction, the amount remaining, the amount past due, if any. But perhaps the most significant column is over here at the right: terms of sale and usual manner of payment. Here, for example, I stands for installment payments, $129 per payment, and that last number, 1, is a code. It means the subject usually pays within 30 days. That's pretty good. But here, a code number 2, 30 to 60 days. Down here, O, stands for open account, and the code number 3, payments more than 60 days, but not more than 90 days late. You'll notice the higher the code number, the higher the credit risk. So this worst number of all, 9, is usually reserved for deadbeats. This man would have a hard time getting credit. Then there is a section called Public Record. Here we show a collection agency record, a couple of lawsuits, and the fact that the subject was divorced and remarried. Up here, in small type, is a warning that the information is confidential. But in one case, the report from Greenville, Mississippi, there was an additional warning. It says right there in red ink, under no circumstances should the subject be allowed to see or have possession or knowledge of this report or a copy of it. We decided to try one more mailing, but to make it a little more difficult. There were 3 differences this time. First, we no longer stated that we were thinking of granting credit. We simply asked for a full credit report with no explanation why. Second, we no longer chose individuals at random. Instead, we chose persons who had complained to congressional investigators about their credit problems. And third, although we didn't know it at the time, the industry had just issued new, tougher guidelines. They state that local credit bureaus must require contracts with clients in which the client certifies that inquiries will be made only for purposes of granting credit. This time we sent out 28 letters, and as expected, we had a tougher time. Only 1/4 of the credit bureaus sent us reports directly. This one came from Boston, Mass. This one from Alma, Michigan, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, Rice Lake, Wisconsin, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and this one came from Peoria, Illinois. The Peoria report had another of those special warnings attached. Strictly confidential, it said. Don't subject yourself to libel suits. But there were some bright spots. This time, 12 credit bureaus referred us to the New York Bureau, and one flatly refused to help us at all. 5 did not reply, but 3 others said that they would help us if we'd fill out application forms and sign contracts. In one case, we decided to see what would happen. The Credit Bureau of Dalton, Georgia, asked us to sign a written contract affirming that we were intending to grant credit and agreeing to keep the information confidential. We did so. The letter also asked us to advise what type of company we were. We replied, we are a systems company. We mailed that off and within a few days received the credit report that we'd requested. It would seem that signing a written contract is not much of a safeguard. All the client has to do is lie. But 7 of the 28 bureaus provided us with credit reports without even that precaution.
What about your members who violate your rules, who give out information to people who are not entitled to it? Do you have any penalties?
We have some 30-odd membership qualifications and requirements. And any member who is found to be violating these and does not correct the violation, their membership is subject to cancellation, and we do cancel them on occasion.
About how many members have you canceled over the years?
Over the years, I couldn't tell you. I would say it might average 10 to 15 a year.
Out of 2,200.
Mm-hmm.
We found more violations than that just by mailing out 48 letters. Perhaps things will be better as the industry's new guidelines receive more attention. One would certainly hope that things will be better. In the meantime, Transitaire Systems has been quietly phased out of the credit business. Mike Wallace, CBS News, New York.
And that's the way it is. Monday, March 17th, 1969. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
What causes my heartburn, my indigestion?
In your stomach, excess acid may build and build, can cause acid indigestion, heartburn, that burning sensation. But Rolaids, with its exclusive buffering compound, has thousands of absorbent particles. Each consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid, gives fast, lasting relief. Rolaids consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid.
Hey, Nick, Cap. Ah, Listerine. Does our captain have bad breath?
Captain has a date. Do you?
Well, I'm...
Why you guys take chances?
What do you mean?
Listerine kills germs that can cause bad breath, and it lasts.
Ready, Johnny?
And that proves my point, right?
Right?
Right. I see you guys learn fast.
Okay, Captain, you made your point.
And so did Listerine Antiseptic. Kills germs, keeps breath fresh for hours. For hours.
Seems to me it's taking an awfully long time today.
When are we going to be there?
Ellen, honey, don't bother Daddy now.
So you thought all your problems this winter would be under the wheels. Well, on a day like this, your problem is not skidding. It's seeing. It's blinding winter glare. Would ordinary sunglasses help? Let's test them and see. All ordinary sunglasses can do is darken glare. They're just not designed to remove it. But Cool Ray Polaroid sunglasses are. Watch this. Cool Ray Polaroid sunglasses have the famous Polaroid lens with the optical barrier that wipes out reflected glare, ends blind spots, and lets you see what's coming at you. Ask for Cool Ray Polaroid sunglasses. You only get them when you see this tag.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. 60 Minutes jets you to luxurious Palm Beach for a look at the beautiful people and examines the growing welfare crisis facing our cities. These and other features tomorrow night on CBS.